The church bell tolled like a warning, not a blessing, as Emmett Sloan stood stiff in his best coat, sweat trickling down his spine despite the chill wind. He had dreamed of this day for months, scribbling careful letters by lantern light, imagining a soft-spoken, delicate woman who would fit into the hollow spaces of his lonely ranch life. But when the wagon door creaked open and a figure stepped down, the air seemed to split. The woman who approached was no delicate dream. She was enormous, taller than Emmett by half a head, her shoulders broad enough to block the sun, her steps shaking the dust like hooves. The whispers started at once from the gathered townsfolk, laughter smothered behind hands, and Emmett felt his throat close. The woman, his bride-to-be, lifted her veil, revealing sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're Emmett Sloan," she said, her voice deep, almost a man's, yet steady as a mountain. "I'm Ada." The name struck him like a hammer. He'd expected a lily, a rose, something light and delicate. Not Ada. Not this towering presence that made him feel like a boy in oversized boots. His first thought was to run. But the church doors slammed shut with a gust of wind, and the preacher cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The crowd leaned forward, hungry for a spectacle. Emmett swallowed hard, his dream collapsing, replaced by a storm of shame and confusion. Still, when Ada extended her hand, large, calloused, strong, something in him froze. There was no malice in her eyes, only a quiet, searching honesty that felt more dangerous than laughter. He took her hand, his palm vanishing in her grip, and the vows began. By the time the preacher declared them man and wife, Emmett's world had tilted completely. He'd thought marriage would bring comfort. Instead, it brought a stranger twice his size and the judgment of everyone he knew. But as they stepped outside, the first real shock came. Waiting by the hitching post was not Ada's trunk, but a massive iron cage draped in canvas, heavy enough to take 4 men to load. The sheriff stood nearby, frowning. "That yours, ma'am?" Ada didn't flinch. "It is." She yanked the canvas free, and Emmett's blood turned to ice. Inside the cage was a snarling gray wolf, its eyes glowing with feral rage, its fangs tearing at the bars. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emmett stumbled back, his new bride calm as stone beside the beast. You brought that," he stammered. Ada's gaze cut to him, unblinking. "It's part of me. You'll learn." The crowd erupted in whispers, some crossing themselves, others spitting curses. Emmett's heart hammered. This was no ordinary woman. This was a force. And whether by choice or fate, she was his now. That night, when they rode back to his ranch, the cage chained to the wagon rattled with the wolf's growls, every sound shredding Emmett's nerves. Ada drove in silence, her profile etched hard against the moonlight. He tried to speak, to ask why, to demand answers, but every time the words died in his throat. When they arrived, she unloaded the cage herself, dragging it with terrifying strength toward the barn. Emmett stood helpless, his horses skittish, his world tilting further from anything familiar. Only when the wolf finally quieted did Ada turn to him. "You wanted a wife," she said evenly. "But what you got is a partner. And partners keep secrets until the time is right." Emmett's stomach churned. The dream of a gentle bride who would patch his shirts and cook stew by the fire was gone. In its place was a towering woman with a caged wolf and eyes that seemed to see straight through him. But as fear clawed at him, so did something else, curiosity. Who was this Ada, really? And why did some buried part of him feel like this was only the beginning of a story bigger than anything he'd imagined? The wind clawed at the shutters all night, but inside the ranch house it was not the storm outside that kept Emmett awake, it was the woman lying in the next room, a stranger tied to him by vows he had spoken with a dry mouth and trembling hands. He stared at the dark ceiling, replaying every moment, every whisper in town, every image of Ada towering over him with that wolf snarling in its cage. At last he rose, pulling on his boots, and padded softly toward the barn. He told himself it was the animals he worried about, but his heart thudded heavier than that excuse allowed. The barn smelled of hay and smoke. Lantern light flickered from within, though he hadn't lit it. Slowly he pushed the door open. Ada was there, kneeling by the cage, her face so close to the bars Emmett's stomach lurched. The wolf wasn't snarling now, it was silent, watching her, its amber eyes locked on hers. She murmured something he couldn't catch, her hand brushing the iron bars like a lover's cheek. When she finally spoke loud enough for him to hear, the words chilled him, "Not tonight. He's not ready. Give me time." The wolf huffed, almost as if it understood. Ada turned then, catching Emmett in the doorway. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she stood in a single smooth motion, taller than the shadows, and said, "You spy poorly." Emmett stiffened, his face heating. "You're talkin' to a beast." "I was calming him," she corrected. "He knows me better than you do. What in God's name are you?" The words slipped out before he could stop them. Ada's eyes narrowed, but she didn't lash back. Instead, she walked past him, her shoulder brushing his. "I'm the woman you married. And if you want to live long on this land, you'll stop asking questions before you're ready for the answers." He didn't sleep after that. By morning, the wolf was gone. The cage stood open, the door swinging, no tracks in the dirt leading away. Panic shot through Emmett. He rushed outside, scanning the pasture, the hills. Nothing. When he stormed back into the house, Ada was calmly ladling stew into bowls, the children of his hired hand already at the table. Ada had risen before dawn, cooked, and fed them like she'd always belonged. "Where is it?" he demanded. Ada didn't look up. "Safe. You let a wolf loose?" His voice cracked louder than intended. She set the ladle down, turning her steady gaze on him. "If it wanted blood, you'd already be dead. Think on that." Her words struck harder than a fist. The children looked between them, wide-eyed. Emmett swallowed, his anger tangling with confusion. That evening, a rider came hard from town. Dust billowed behind his horse, and Emmett stepped outside, rifle in hand. The man slid from the saddle, his face pale. "Sloan, you best know. Pinkerton men rode in this morning. A skin after a woman tall as a pine tree, travels with a beast in a cage. Offered $100 to anyone who'd speak." Emmett's blood froze. He glanced toward the house, where Ada stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. "They'll be back," the rider warned. "And they don't ask twice." When the man rode off, silence settled heavy. Ada stepped forward, her voice low. "I told you. Secrets. Now they're here." "Tell me the truth," Emmett snapped. "Before men with badges drag us both into the dirt." Ada looked past him, toward the horizon bleeding red with sunset. Her jaw worked before she finally spoke. "That wolf? It's mine because I saved it. Because I needed it. Because the men you call law hunted me and I learned to survive with teeth sharper than theirs. I never killed, but they'll swear I did. They want me gone because I don't fit in their world. And now, neither do you." Emmett felt the ground sway under him. He had dreamed of a quiet life with a gentle bride. Instead he stood on the edge of war, with a woman who might burn his ranch down or save it in the same breath. And still, against every ounce of sense, a strange fire stirred in his chest. Not desire, not yet, but something that looked dangerously like respect. That night, the shutters rattled again, and Emmett sat by the door with his rifle across his lap. Ada sat opposite him, her knife resting against her thigh. They didn't speak, but their silence was no longer empty. It was a waiting silence, sharp as the moment before thunder. When the howls came from the hills, long and low, Emmett's hands trembled. Ada didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her eyes bright in the lantern glow. "He's calling," she whispered. "The wolf. And if he's calling, it means the hunt's begun." And in that instant, Emmett knew the quiet life he had prayed for was dead. In its place was something far wilder, far more dangerous. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he wanted to run from it, or straight into it.